Hey everyone, and welcome to the fourth video in the object-oriented programming portion. We are talking today about header files. So header files, these are used to separate the classes from the main. We do this to separate into smaller files instead of holding one file with all of the content. The header files will be used to store the classes, the structs, or any function definitions. The header file will use the .h extension, such as it'll look as such header.h. How to use it? So within the main file, you'll need to include the header file, just like a library. The header file must be saved in the same storage location as the CPP file, as a header file will use the quotes instead of the less than and greater than. And then within the CPP file, you need to include header.h. So now we can go and see what that looks like. Here's how you can get some help. So here we have a file. So let's just walk through what we have before we push it out into different portions. So we have our libraries, of course, and then we have our class. We have a student class. Everything that's private for a student. We have a first name, we have a last name, we have an address, we have a city, we have a state, a zip, a student ID, a phone number, a birth date, an email, a major, and a GPA. Our public methods that we have are our public functions. So we have two constructors, a default constructor and a parameterized constructor. One thing to note about our parameterized constructor is it holds 1, 2, 3, 4, it holds 5 variables. And inside here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is a partially parameterized constructor. So it assigns values for these 5 and then auto assigns values for the remaining 7. So that is a partially parameterized constructor. Next we have two functions. We have a load partial function, which must load the remaining or load what's necessary, as well as print data function. So now we're seeing something different. We see that right here I'm utilizing the closing of the class. So now the class is closed, but we have these functions that aren't defined. So just like as we've talked about in previous videos, you can use what's called a prototype, where you can do the class state the class at the top and then define the class at the bottom. We're going to be utilizing that same principle here. It'll just look a little bit different because it's referring to the object of student. So the way that we tell this definition is referring to student is we're going to tell all of these that this is a student object, and then we use what's called the binary scope operator, or the binary resolution operator, which is 2 colons. So student, colon, colon, student. We're telling the student object that we're referring to the student constructor. So this is a non-parameterized constructor, so it's a default constructor. So we're going to set all these values to nothing or to null, however you want to think about that. Next, we have a partially parameterized constructor. Here we are setting all the values to what was specifically passed in. So again, we are referring to the student object, and we have our binary scope operator, and we have the student constructor with the partially parameterized constructor here. So we are passing in the first name, the last name, the campus-wide ID, the email, and the major. And the remaining 7 items here will all be given a default input. Now the remaining information, such as address, city, state, zip, phone number, birth date, and GPA, most of that information, with the exception of GPA, will all be filled out in the load partial portion. So we're going to get address, city, state, zip, and birth date. And phone number. All of that in the load partial portion. Next we have our print data. Print data is just going to it's just going to print the name, first name and last name, print the address, campus-wide ID, email, major, phone number, date of birth, and all of these are indented, so it'll look more formatted. Inside main, we have the student of dude with the partially parameterized constructor. First name, last name, campus-wide ID, email, and major are the things passed in. And then we have the dude load partial call and the dude print data call. So first let's run it. So we'll save it, we'll build it, and we'll run it. Hi dude, please enter your house number and address. So 100 Elm Street. City, My city is called city. My state, CA, 90,000. Birth date, 01/01/0001. Phone number, we'll just go cross. Alright, so there we go. I have my name, Duder, my address, my campus-wide, my email, my major, my phone number, and my date of birth. So all of that. Now let's talk about the header files. So let's close the console to give ourselves more space. Now I'm going to come over here and I want to create a header file, and I need to create it in the same location. So I'm going to right click or two finger click on here, and where I would normally go to new source file, now I'm going to go to new header file. And I'm going to create a new header file. I'm going to call it just header.h. Now I'm going to put these one next to the other. So I want my header and my .cpp side by side. So here we have them. So I have two ways of doing this. I could copy my class data, everything in between classes and main. So I can copy all this and push it over. Now, some things I want to talk about over here. First off, I can get rid of all of this junk at the top. So we have these are some functionalities that they like to add to it. It's an if not defined, then define, and then the end of the definition. So this is just used for no repeats. So I could just come over here and paste my code in the middle, and that'll work fine. Or if you want to, if you're confident that you're not repeating anything, you could just replace the whole thing. So you get rid of their if not defined, then define. Now what it's saying is, it's looking at this code over here and it's saying, hey, well, we don't know what string is. I don't know what string is. String, cout. I don't know what any of that is, because that's all part of the include IO stream in the using namespace standard. And then over here it's saying, yo, I don't know what student is. I don't know what load partial is. None of these things make sense to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over these two, and I'm going to push them at the top of this file here. So now my header file is going to be okay, where all of this stuff makes sense. But over here, my main file, the .cpp file, is extremely confused. So I need to include the header.h, save it, and then we'll build it. And now these two files are able to communicate. My left file and my right file, we'll just close it because I'm not going to run it for now. My left file and my right file are able to communicate within each other. Or no, I'm sorry, that's a bad way of putting it, because they can't communicate back and forth. The only thing that can happen right now is my .cpp file is able to grab all of this information from the .h file. So essentially what it looks like is all of this item here is copy and pasted right where include.h is. That's exactly what happens. So this runs, I can save it, I can build it, and I can run it, and this works fine. Everything works fine, all in one file. Or I can copy all of this, put it in the header file, and all I have to do is include, #include, header.h. And this is just used to clean up the code, to modularize it, so we have different things sitting in different locations, so it's not 1,000 lines all one after the other. This is just used to break things up. Doesn't seem like it helps much when we're only writing 50 lines, but when it starts to get into bigger files, this becomes very helpful. So hope this made sense, and we'll see you in the next video.